have a way to defer the tax situation there? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And so the first one I was referring to is a 1031 exchange, which only applies to investment real estate. The second one I'm referring to is called a deferred sales trust.
A real eye opener to see that there are ways that people can
Welcome, everybody. We're just getting started here. Hope you're doing well this Friday. And looks like we are live now, and we had a video playing, but a little technical difficulties. And I want to welcome everybody to the Capital Gains Tax Deferred Sales Trust Mastermind, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options and not having a clear plan is the enemy. And using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust is an amazing way to exit highly appreciated assets to defer capital gains taxes. And that can include primary homes, businesses, real estate, cryptocurrency, public or private stock. And we're excited to kind of do a deep dive every single Friday by kind of sharing about the Deferred Sales Trust, trying to make it really simple for everybody, as well as talk about live deals that are happening right now, and then open it up for questions. People have questions or live deals they want to chat live with myself and oftentimes my team. I think I'm solo today. A couple of the gentlemen I usually run with are busy with some weddings and different things. And so it'll just be me by myself and whoever else is here with us today. So that being said, I'll give you a little bit of the kind of the vision for this. And then we'll talk again about the deal close story of the week. And then we'll do frequently asked questions and or just open it up for questions. So the main vision is to help people understand that when you exit, you have one opportunity typically to defer tax, and that's at the close of escrow, or unless you're in a 1031 exchange or something of that nature to defer. You can also use opportunity zones too, those which can be good if you can find something, but that's within 180 days. But generally speaking, you got to have everything set up prior to. And so our mission is to help people understand that it's more than just about cash flow. It's actually about tax flow. And actually, I have my new shirt came out here. It says it's tax flow, not just cash flow. And the whole idea is to think beyond just cash flow, right? Because that's what most things, or most of the ways that we think about it, or as a lot of what's out there, it's just cash flow. This cash flow, it's always about cash flow, but you got to realize that, and we got to remind ourselves that it's even more important than ever to think about tax flow, because taxes are going higher, and the most expensive thing you'll ever pay in your life is taxes. And so if we can kind of monitor and strategize for tax flow, we can create and preserve more wealth. And that's on the exit of assets that are highly appreciated. So that being said, who's the Deferred Sales Trust work for? Well, it's for anybody, generally speaking, that has about $1 million net proceeds and $1 million gain on a per transaction basis, unless they have two that are going to equal about that amount. Now, sometimes certain states have higher tax, like California and New York and other states. So it's never just a one size fits all, but that's generally what we like to see. If we can have $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain, then it's a home run, no matter what state you're in or no matter what you're selling. And why is that? Well, because you're looking at 25% to 50% in capital gains tax and depreciation recapture. Again, of course, depending on what kind of assets you do own. And so the first kind of step about tax flow is really understanding and budgeting for what are your taxes going to be? What is that going to look like when and if you exit that asset? And then what's your plan to either defer that or to mitigate some of those taxes? And that's where we focus like a laser and are very passionate about that. Part of that is the story of 2008 crash, which honestly, it's going to be interesting. I'm going to open up for questions here in a little while to see what everyone's kind of feeling with what's going on in the marketplace. Not that we think the 2008 crash is happening again, but something's happening, and it's starting to really seem like the tide is turning here and the marketplace is turning, and we're going to see what the outcome of those things are. But it is a situation where in 2006 and 7, it was really, things were great, and then things started to turn, and then they turned fast. And then in 2008, obviously the crash happened. And I saw clients, friends, family, when I was working at Marcus and Millichap, lose half or lose everything in the next 3-year period. The main things that we identified was they didn't have a real solid tax flow plan. I mean, they had a 1031 exchange plan for investment real estate, but that just created a situation where sometimes they were double downing in a market that didn't make any sense. For example, they had too much debt, not enough liquidity, and they were selling high, and 180 days later they were buying higher. Or they had primary homes that they didn't qualify for a 1031. And so they ended up just either holding the homes, or they were refinancing the homes and taking debt out and then losing those homes. And so when you learn that the Deferred Sales Trust can solve those challenges, it opens up a whole nother kind of blue ocean for the way that you can exit. And why might people be exiting today? Well, it could be for some of those reasons. They want less debt. They want more diversification. They want either more cash flow. They want maybe optimal timing to buy properties when it makes sense for them. They perhaps want to retire. They perhaps want to separate partnerships. They perhaps want a new entrepreneurial journey with the capital and not have to be stuck in a business or real estate or cryptocurrency at a price that is highly appreciated, but they're feeling trapped by that tax. And so really, how do we solve for that? Well, we use mainly the Deferred Sales Trust to solve for that. Of course, you can use cost segregation studies. You can also use 1031 exchanges. You can also use opportunity zones. You can also give it a little way to charity. So we help you to navigate those choices and then help you to execute on the Deferred Sales Trust. We don't do charitable-oriented trusts. We'll just refer those out. We don't do 1031 exchanges. We refer those out. Oftentimes, we're doing the Deferred Sales Trust, 9 out of 10 deals that we're seeing today for those reasons of what? Optimal timing, diversification, tax deferral. You also don't have to go into like-kind investment real estate, which is really neat. I mean, you can sell crypto and you can go into real estate. You can sell real estate and go into crypto. You can sell real estate and go into the stock market. In other words, you can diversify your holdings and you can defer a lot of tax. And a couple of examples of this, a client, they sold their 5th property into the Deferred Sales Trust. This latest one was a $48 million apartment complex in Las Vegas. Now, there were 2 GP partners and they had a lot of LP partners that were behind them. And for their GP interest, they weren't going to do a 1031 exchange, nor was the entity. In fact, they're in the business of multifamily syndication where they're buying and selling real estate, and they're typically not ever doing 1031 exchanges nor allowing 1031s to go into their property. So 1031 wasn't really even an option for them. A number of reasons for that, but the Deferred Sales Trust was, and it didn't affect the sale, it didn't hold up the sale or affect the nature of what the buyer was buying. In fact, they were able to exit all of their GP positions. Now, another LP also came with them and then deferred their tax and then diversify that equity. And they said it, they told me, hey, Brett, we sold it for about 48 million. We were in contract for 49. They retraded us last minute. But to be honest with you, rates have gone so high, so fast in this inflationary market this past 2 months that we would have went lower. They didn't necessarily have a reason for retrading us except for the market shifting. And we gave them $1 million and really didn't blink an eye because we probably would have went 3 or 4 million lower than what we were in contract for. And now we get to diversify our equity. Now we get to defer our tax, and they're putting it into some hard money lending and putting it into the stock market, which they're kind of buying dollar cost averaging at a lower price. And then they're going to put it back into their own real estate deals when it makes sense. In other words, they're diversifying this equity, but they're also diversifying the timing of placing the capital, which is known as dollar cost averaging, right? And that way you can lower risk, potentially, right? More likely you can, and you can also more likely preserve your wealth. So those are just some of the reasons to do the Deferred Sales Trust, and that's a live deal. That one just closed about 3 weeks ago, and it was an exciting deal. So what I do want to talk about, besides just the kind of also a couple other live deals, we have some business sales that are going on. We're seeing right now business owners, exiting some highly appreciated. We have one that's an app business. They're selling an app business. We have one, they're selling it's like one of those sky zones, like, jumping like trampoline businesses, which is pretty cool. we have another business. They're in the kind of the agricultural business, so they're selling highly appreciated asset there. So a lot of business exits as well. Cryptocurrency has kind of gone really, really soft, obviously, with what's happened there in the past few weeks. Values are way down, but if you're a cryptocurrency investor and owner, now is the time to get your tax flow plan in place so that if and when prices go back up, you have a plan to exit. You're not trying to learn on the fly, because as we know now with cryptocurrency market, it can be very high, very low in a short period of time. So those are some of the things that are going on. I'm going to open it up for questions now, since it's just me and I could talk for a long time, but I have the podcast and the YouTube channel for that. So I'm going to open up for questions. I've got a couple strategic alliances in the Newton brothers. So the Newton brothers, you can unmute yourself, say hello. Anyone else that has questions, you can also put it in the chat. And you can also just unmute yourself and ask any questions that you have on a live deal, anything I just said, any thoughts or comments. It's here for everybody. So Newton brothers, what do you think? We have Nicola, we have Candice. Who else do we have here? See the whole list. Show participants. We've got Rebecca, we've got Maria, we got Peckins, we got I am Douglas. Hey Douglas, what's going on? And so anyone have questions, thoughts, feedback? I'm here for you guys, and I can also just dive into some frequently asked questions that have come up this week for some other live deals to kind of go through. So in fact, that sounds good to me too. I'll do that. So let me pull up one, and this is actually a live deal that's going on, and he's asking questions about the Deferred Sales Trust. And one of the biggest things that comes up is people say, well, I love to do the Deferred Sales Trust, but one of the things that's holding me up is I feel like I lose control of my funds, and as a creditor, I'm not in control like I was as an owner. And this is kind of the foundation of how and why the Deferred Sales Trust works. But we have ways to give you as much indirect control as you can have without having it be taxable. But by the way, you're probably already very familiar with this, or at least somewhat, if you have an IRA or a 401k, or if you've done a 1031 exchange, and that you do lose some control, okay? And that you have a third party like custodian that's overseeing the IRA account. You have a third party 1031 qualified intermediary that's having you follow certain rules in order for the funds, and you do lose some control, right? And that's part of how the government can actually allow us to do these things, is because they have a third party intermediary, if you will, or third party that's not related to you, to make sure we're all following the rules to keep in the guidelines of tax deferral. And so the Deferred Sales Trust, I always like to say, it's kind of like an IRA or 401k. And yes, you're not an owner, but you are a lender. And so what you're doing is you're lending the funds to the trust in exchange for the trust to pay you slowly over time. And that's the essence of why you can have tax deferral. And so it is true that you're losing some control, but you're in indirect control. But really the question is, what control really matters, right? What matters the most? Well, first of all, you want to make sure that the funds can't move without your approval. And that's absolutely true. Their investments can't move without your approval. And that's absolutely true. But also that there's checks and balances in place, such as we use third-party financial advisors, like the Newton brothers. By the way, they're part of the Strategic Alliance. And Jake Muller, who's on the call today, I think he's at a wedding with his family. If you're wondering, he'll be back hopefully next week. But that's part of how we keep transparency and we keep accountability. My role, or our role at Capital Gains Tax Solutions, is the third-party trustee. And so we help to facilitate the trust. We also have to approve of the investments as well. So it does take approval and proof of distributions. But everything's typically pre-set up even before you close, or right as you close, you're setting up the promissory note and the payment back, and you're approving that. And you are the lender. And so you have to ask yourself, are banks concerned that they're losing control of a house if they lend you funds to a house? And the answer is no, because they can foreclose on it if you don't make the payments. And so you have all the protections and rights of a lender, and the collateral is secured against investments that you approve, of which can be some of the biggest companies in the world. It could be S&P 500, Costco, Netflix, Google, Apple, Facebook, Walmart, these really, really big, strong companies, Tesla, that are the money is invested in these companies and producing returns or appreciation or dividends and or commercial real estate, passive or active, or deals that you can do on your own, which is really the best part of the deferred sales trust, I believe, which is what's called entrepreneurial freedom, and that you can partner with the trust to purchase new investment real estate or a new business venture or go back into cryptocurrency. And this allows you to be the owner, and I call this lendership. Lendership, you can be the owner of an LLC of which the trust partners with to fund this new business venture. And this is where we go back to the what I call the Monday morning quarterback story. Gentleman sold a $20 million property in Minnesota, deferred all of his tax into the deferred sales trust, and partly because he said, this 1031 market makes 0 sense. I think something's going to happen. I think the market's going to shift. I'm going to take some chips off the table, but I don't want to pay the tax. So I'll use the deferred sales trust. And this guy's worth a couple $100 million at the time. So he's really smart. And he's like, I'll take a shot at this thing, and he did. And he put it into the trust. He put it into conservative stocks, bonds, mutual funds, stuff that wasn't subject to huge market corrections. Even when the market dropped, he was protected because he wasn't trying to hit home runs. He was really, really kind of cautious. But his property that he sold and that buyer who bought it couldn't make the payments. And so the bank foreclosed on that buyer, and it took about 5 years for this to happen. He foreclosed on that buyer and called back the previous owner of the deferred sales trust client and said, hey, do you want to buy it back, your property that you sold? And he goes, well, maybe what's the price? And the bank said, well, about 40% less than what you sold it for. He says, that sounds like a pretty good deal. Give me a couple days. So he's able to form an LLC and working exit out of some of the investments in the stock market, fund the LLC with those funds, and purchase back the property at 60 cents on the dollar, all tax deferred. So he didn't exit and pay the tax. He just rearranged the investments within the trust to purchase this with him, and he is now the owner again of the property that he had sold. Okay, and again, I call it the Monday morning quarterback because he played it perfectly. He sold it at kind of the peak, he bought it at the bottom, and he bought it at about 60 cents on the dollar, all tax deferred. And this is the part where it seems like it's too good to be true, but it is doable if we understand that the marketplace is shifting and there's opportunities to sell high and buy low always, but especially if your property is highly appreciated. Another thing to consider is if you have a low depreciation schedule, if you have the ability to reset a new depreciation schedule. Some clients, they come to us and they say, Brett, I have this highly appreciated property. I've fully depreciated. All of the cash flow is being taxed. So if there's a way for me to defer this tax, then and also reset a new depreciation schedule, that would be awesome. And that's exactly what we did for our client who sold a $2.6 million business in Alabama, deferred all of his tax. He had no basis. And then he purchased or invested with the trust into a multifamily complex in Tennessee, and was able to defer, get depreciation on that as well. And so that being said, I'm saying a lot, and I'm going to open it up for questions again. Usually I have my partners in crime that are with me, but Candace, Maria, Nicola, Peckins, Rebecca, anybody, questions or thoughts, comments? Maybe you have a live deal we can discuss. I'm going to open it up right now. Who would like to say hi? See the Newton brothers.
Hey, Brett.
What's up, Brett?
Hey, Newton brothers. How we doing, guys?
Oh, delightful. We actually have a few random questions, if that's okay.
It sounds good. I like the Chiefs in the background, man. Is that a new picture, or has that been there the whole time?
It's been there for a little bit. A little while.
So, yeah, these are going to be kind of random. I don't even know if you know the answers. So this is kind of on the spot, test of your knowledge, I guess.
Sure. Let's give it a shot.
So we have a client that is looking at setting up a trust. They're recently married, and they don't want it to be a joint trust. They just want to own the trust themselves. And so they're fine, obviously, if they die, disabled, get divorced, they're fine giving them half the money or whatever. But they don't want them to really know what's coming in, what's going out, or have any control of those things. almost like the way he would treat his business account with stuff coming in and out. Is it possible, even if they're married, to just set up the trust just as him as the owner, and then she could be beneficiary and all that stuff?
And is the asset that was being sold, is it he had it before they were married, or is you said they recently married?
Recently married, but he won't get the asset officially until after.
That's a good question. It sounds like and then what are they trying to achieve there? Like what's the outcome? What does he or she want that?
So really what he wants to have happen is her to not really know what's coming in and out, almost like a business account, right?
Okay.
So he's historically seen things not necessarily go great when spouses see millions of dollars flowing in and out of stuff, is some of his concerns. So he wants it to be an account for himself, not for them as a married entity.
Yeah, he just wants to have control over basically what's happening in the account, and he's fine legally if his wife owns half of it, and whatever happens, death, divorce.
No, he doesn't want her to own half of it. Like he just wants to be the only person on it. But if something happens, he's fine with her getting half of it.
Yeah, because that's half of it, right? Is if something does happen, death, divorce, then it goes to what's the legal precedence of this asset, and he's fine with her getting half of it, but
Yeah, you guys still there? I think delayed out. I think I got most of that. Yeah. So he definitely wants the knowledge of the capital to be kind of just his eyes only, and then he doesn't want to he doesn't mind if he were to pass. It goes to his spouse.
He wants it to go to her, or if they get divorced, he's fine splitting it. Like he's fine with all of that. He just doesn't want it to be jointly owned. He wants to own it and doesn't really want her to see the funds going in and out of it.
It sounds like an estate planning, like a living trust thing, right? Because so the DST is the asset itself that the actual owner has is a promissory note. So to me, my instinct is that it's work with the living trust attorney to have that asset, he's still in his name, right? Any asset that is, right? Especially anything that's beforehand. And then the living trust is bigger, and it stipulates that upon, passing, the asset goes to the other spouse, right? So that's in my mind, the kind of the intricate details of that on the deferred sales trust side. I don't see why not, but I wouldn't be the one to opine or have a final say on that. That would be the tax attorneys for sure.
That's something that you could ask or find out from Todd. So this is a client we're working with you on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, we can.
Can I jump in real quick?
Oh, hello. Yes, welcome.
Look, man, how you doing?
Is this Douglas?
Yeah, man. How you doing, man?
Good, Douglas. How you doing? Where are you calling from?
Oh, I'm in DC right now.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I think you were on a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yeah, on your show.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Douglas. Well, jump on in. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so there's a different type of trust that could be created that will give your client exactly what he's looking for, where he could just make her a successor trustee in case he dies, and then she could control everything if she wants to, if he wants that. But definitely there's a different type of trust he could set up that makes him just the trustee for the trust, and he's not going to be the creator. It's going to be more like a complex trust setup. So he's going to be somebody else will be the creator of the trust. It's going to be an irrevocable trust, and he can actually move the property into that trust, and trust will own that property 100%. He controls it because he's the sole trustee, and he could make her a successor trustee. And that's pretty much it. We'll just do a quick claim deed the property over to the trust. There's no property tax transfer or transfer tax or whatever. And that's it. And he still maintains control. So if he dies, then she can step in and take over because she's the successor, if that's what he wants. Or he could.
Yeah. So the deferred sales trust is a little different in that the ownership is not the client, right? It's not the husband or wife. In fact, so they don't own the trust, but I think what you're saying is they can set up a living trust of which he could be the sole trustee. And then
Okay.
upon passing, she becomes the co-trust. She becomes the successor trustee. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, not the living trust. Living trust is a grantor. This would be like a non-grantor trust.
Mhm.
All right, but non-grantor, irrevocable, complex trust. So it's not set up as a simple trust. It's set up more like a complex trust, and so that will help the client. I'll give you an example. I mean, when I went through my divorce, that's the type of trust that I had, and there was no 50-50 or any of those things. And that same trust owns my company. There was no 50-50. Even when she brought it up in court, the judge couldn't do anything because I could have resigned if I needed to, because my job was a fiduciary to protect the trust. So that didn't show up. They couldn't even touch nothing because it doesn't have nothing to do with me. And then when they did her lawyer tried to do his research to see who created the trust. It showed I never created it. So it's very powerful, and it does what it needs to do.
Excellent. Thanks, Doug, for sharing. So, Newton Brothers, any I think we should probably take that one offline on the specifics there. We've
Yeah.
never had. I've had married couples just have the promissory note in one person's name, and they just say, "Hey, I want it in one person's name," and then we don't have to give access to the accounts, right? For the for line of sight, right, onto things. So that might be that might be part of the solution. You just say, "Hey, we want the promissory note just in one person's name." And we want line of sight just to be this, right? Whether or not she could force to see something, I don't know. I don't know that she could if it's just promissory notes in one person's name. So let's take that one offline. Okay.
Yeah,
Guys?
so run it by Todd, and then we'll set up a call with that client and you. And
Sounds good.
We're just trying to expand
Awesome, Brett.
everyone's horizons here, Brett.
Brett, a couple more questions for you. Are you familiar with reverse 1031s, how they work, and then 721 upreats, or if they're the same, or?
Yeah, somewhat familiar with those. So never done a reverse. They're hard to do, expensive. But essentially you're buying the property first. You typically got to have, lots of liquidity, lots of capital on the side. And then you turn around and you sell your asset. And then as long as you follow all the rules and do all the things, you can essentially buy before you had sold, and you do it within the 180 days, then it works out. So that's kind of the reverse exchange 1031. Is that your question on that? I don't know how to understand that, or?
Yeah. Okay. That makes some sense. And then 721 upreat.
What's your question on that?
What is it? I'm not overly familiar with it. I was just curious if you had experience with it.
It's another one of our joint clients with you.
Yeah. So the 721. So it's the way I understand that. And I haven't done those personally, but it's a large. It's kind of like a Delaware, and that you're going into you're 1031ing or 721ing your asset, and this is only real estate again, right? This doesn't work for anything else. Into a larger pool of a REIT with a big operator. So you're kind of getting absorbed into their portfolio of properties, or as they continue to buy more properties. So as a Delaware statutory trust is typically 1, 2, or 3 properties, smaller scale, one-off deals, where you're trading your interest into a percentage ownership of their property that's already closed. A 721 might be 5, 10, 15, 20, 30. And it's kind of like a conglomerate of just continual growth. And you're coming in there and you're deferring your tax. The major outcome is that you can sell and you can defer the tax, but you're talk about giving up control. Like this is actually kind of a good point to what I was saying before. People say, "Oh, I'm giving up control at the deferred sales trust." You go, well, if you do a Delaware statutory trust, you're literally giving up all control, complete control, right? In fact, typically 7 to 10 year holds, no liquidity, no diversification, and very high fees, as well as 5 to 6% interest return, usually, give or take, as well as typically not very value add deals. So in other words, you give up all control to this other third party. 721s, same thing. Now, I don't think the fees are as high in 721s, but it's you're giving up to a third party. And I think the liquidity actually might be a little bit easier on that one. because there are like kind of a fund where they can get out and you can just pay your tax. So that might be an advantage for 721. But as the deferred sales trust, you can do a mixture of everything, right? You can be entrepreneur on your own and have control by partnering with the trust and doing other purchases whenever you want. You can also be passive into these funds. In fact, it might even be the same fund. So if something's attractive to you about this 721 fund group, they likely take capital, even non 1031 capital, and you can't just, the trust can invest as a portion as a passive investor into those deals. So typically the trust is like a Swiss Army knife, and typically the 721s, the traditional 1031s, the Delaware Statutory Trust are just like a screwdriver, a hammer, and a knife. Like they have their spots and they have their strengths, but they're not as flexible. And the biggest thing is they're not as entrepreneurial or what I call optimal timing. So, let alone the estate tax challenges that I call them the blockbuster 721s, 1031s, Delawares, they don't solve for the estate tax. Remember, you can either have a stepped up basis or you can have it outside your taxable estate, but you can't have both. And so for our ultra high net worth clients too, part of the tax flow game is it's no longer just about 1031 or 721 until you drop, or Delaware Statutory Trust to you drop. It's actually about the deferred sales trust and moving funds outside your taxable estate. We did this for a client out of Colorado. They were 25 million and they were selling a $5 million multifamily property. And they were very sophisticated, very smart. They had a choice for the Delaware, for the 721, for a 1031 exchange. And they like to use the Deferred Sales Trust Plus or the DST 2.0. The number one reason was because they're going to move all 5 million outside their taxable estate, which created an opportunity to eliminate, or it already has. It's eliminated 40% of the death tax on that 5 million and on any of the growth that 5 million happens over their lifetime. And so you look at that and you go, wow. So you're saying I can eliminate 40% death tax on something that I would have just only got the stepped up basis on the other side. And the answer is yes. And so that's a cool part of it. So any thoughts on that, Newton Brothers? If you guys are still there. And we also want to welcome Jim and it's like Candace too. Hello, Candace. Any questions or thoughts on any of that from anybody?
Actually, Brett, I've got a quick question for you.
Yeah.
I'd been on a couple calls earlier, probably about 3-4 weeks ago, but we've invested in a farm and it's up in Oregon. And I'm thinking I just need a little help with the structure and the strategy and how to deploy this. But I did set up a call with you on Monday at 3:00 just to kind of go over it. But I think as this move towards legalization is coming down the pike here in the next 24, 36 months, this structure may start seeing the day of the a little bit of light. And it's more or less how they're going to start syndicating parcels out there. And so a guy that I'm friends with, I'm working with the owners of the farm, and it's a 280 acres, but they're syndicating 10-acre parcels. And they're backed by a large commercial real estate organization. And what they're doing is I'm trying to figure out how we can help them with the Deferred Sales Trust. And so I talked to the owner of the farm and I explained what the Deferred Sales Trust does, this and that. And he said, well, they're not actually transferring title on each of these 10-acre parcels. They're kind of doing a lease back. So each 10-acre parcel is going out at $7.5 million. The first one's already been committed, sold. They're transferring funds. There's going to be 20 of these 10-acre parcels. The second one is 50% subscribed. The third one's getting graded right now, and these have all gone out within a week. So they're moving pretty quick, and they're offering a 10 cap. So if you put in, they're going to divide each 10-acre parcel into 30 subunits. Each subunit is $250,000 a pop, and you're getting a 10 cap on that day one. So the farm's going to pay the lease back on it, and you're getting paid that $25,000 a year guaranteed. And then you're going to get a 2% kicker on top of gross sales. And so they've been in business for about 5 years now, and all the revenue's been up and to the right. But I'm trying to figure out if they're not going to transfer the title on this. We can always put the company, the farm itself, because they're looking to sell probably in the next 18 to 24 months. We can put that in a deferred sales trust, but how can we work with the syndicator and just put each of these parcels in a
Mhm.
trust.
Let me sure I
Just-
got that.
Yeah.
Yeah, make sure I got that. So 200 acre farm, Oregon, and they're you said they're not transferring title, and it's a lease back. So are they doing ground leases with the operator of the farm, or
Sounds
are
like
they
that's
new?
what, yeah, they're
Yeah.
going to be, it's a fully vertically integrated operation. And they're able to 1031 into these syndications because it's basically the commercial real estate brokerage company. Their attorneys came up with a way that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's, he had mentioned that I think it's a 30 year, as long as there's a 30-year lease on it, on a land lease, you can
Mhm.
convert a 1031 into that. So that's part of it, but I'm trying to, and I'm more than happy to get him to jump on the phone with you and kind of,
Yeah, no,
walk
this
through
is
it.
good. This is a good. It's a creative one. So the first thing I would just say is there anyone incurring capital gains tax? And it doesn't sound like there is,
Right.
but if there was, that's the moment we step in. Now, that being said, as they're signing these ground leases and as their people are coming in, you're right. Eventually the owner of the asset could then sell the ground lease,
Right.
right? And in that scenario, then that incurs the capital gains tax. So I think it's probably wise for him to, I think this is why he's doing it, get all of these up and running, get all of these on 30-year leases, and then he could slowly just, it's almost like you're entitling land, if you will, right? You start with bare land, and then you get it entitled, and then you get it, permitted, and then you start to build. Each layer becomes more valuable as you do the work. And so as he's getting these ground leases signed, he's exponentially, especially if they're 30-year leases, they're at $250,000. 10, you said 10 caps, right?
Right.
Then he could turn around and sell it to a third party. Now that's the moment we jump in, right? To
Mhm.
use the deferred sales trust. Now, of course, we want to educate him now and get them all prepared.
Right.
But again, we're capital gains tax solutions. If there's no capital gains tax challenge, there's no solution for us to solve. So
Okay.
until that's really just narrow it down. If and when you're going to incur capital gains tax, would you like a solution beyond the 1031 exchange? Especially for someone like this, because he sounds like he's basically kind of like a developer, right? So he's bought the huge 280 acres and he's probably gone through who knows what to get all of this stuff approved, right?
Right.
And so he probably wants to, let's say he paid $5 million for it and he can turn around and sell it for 30. Say that's $25 million gain. He could roll it into the trust and then he could go do that with multiple $5 million, 280 acre lands and do it again all over again versus trying to have to do a 1031. This is why it's blockbuster of a $30 million asset, right? All at once. And so this is the beauty of the flexibility of the deferred sales trust. I don't know if it really answers the question, Jim, but I think this is a great deal to explore for sure.
No, absolutely. And I appreciate that. And, that's one of the things they use to securitize it is by guaranteeing you a buyback, a 10% premium. So 110% of what you paid, they'll buy it back. And so to your point, I think, they have the ability to sell those individual units as they go through. And I think the value add component where I think they might do this is the value add within this space is that you can only put 3,800 plants on a 10 acre parcel per each license. The value add is going to have them expanding on that once it goes legal and without having to put any more, capital into the deal itself. And so maybe that would trigger these individuals trying to sell that at that time. But I'm more than happy to get him to jump on that call on Monday at 3:00 and kind of chat with you a little bit.
I think that sounds great. Yeah. And then
Okay.
the earlier the better, right? Like anything else, like you don't want to have to be trying to plan your exit when you have an offer on the table to close in 30 days. I mean, we help people all the time do that, but ideally you have your tax flow plan, deferred sales trust all set up. We work on a conditional basis, and meaning if you don't close the deal, don't want to use the trust, you don't owe us anything. However, if you have it in place, at least you have that option to use it should you want to use it. So yeah, Jim, any other questions on that deal or thoughts on a different deal?
Well, one other thing is that he and I both have a pretty sizable amount of shares and stock in the company. It is going to go be publicly traded here by the end of Q3, start of Q4. So I think having both of us will both be in that tier, where it qualifies to jump on that call with you on Monday. So
Perfect.
I think that's kind of a side product of this, but I was thinking if we could roll those syndications in somehow, some way, that can be just an ancillary benefit for.
So whether you have shares, public or private stock, whether you have actual real estate, what's neat about the deferred sales trust, you can have one trust and then you can have multiple promissory notes as you exit each different product or each different asset type. And so, the answer is yes. Happy to go through it and see if it could be a great fit. That's great, Jim.
Have you done any stock sales through the deferred sales trust, or is it
Yeah.
much like crypto? Where they
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. So, one of the best deferred sales trust stories for stock was some of the original Netflix team members
nice.
used it for their public exit of stock in the $5 million range at the time, and so yeah, works great for public stock. Really good for private stock. Really anything that has, again, at least $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain. The public stock one, we do need to use what's called the DST 2.0,
Okay.
which is the one that gets it outside the taxable estate for a couple of reasons. But everything else can use DST 1.0 or 2.0. 2.0 is typically reserved for larger deals unless it's public stock, just kind of FYI. So there are some nuances there between 1.0 and 2.0. Same price, but some nuances on how and where the funds paid back to you and how you receive that and pay tax on that.
Okay, that's great to know. Yeah, so like I said, we've got a tentatively scheduled on the calendar for 3:00 on Monday. So yeah, we can dig in a little deeper at that time.
Great, thank you for prepping me. That's good. I can be thinking about it and prepare for that. So anybody else? We have again Candace. We have Maria. We haven't heard from yet. Nicola, of course, Rebecca. Rebecca, I haven't heard from you in a while. It'd be great to see how you're doing. If you're available to chat a little bit here, happy to answer questions. Yeah, go ahead, Pickens. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well, thanks.
Where do the funds actually live? Like if you purchased a property and you utilize after you've made you've sold a property and let's say you utilized 50% of the funds, so now you have 50% left. Where does that actually live?
Yeah, we're after the close of escrow, where did the deferred sales trust funds go, or where do the funds go to the deferred sales trust? The answer is typically a bank and or a financial institution such as like TD Ameritrade or Charles Schwab is the first step. And so we use a large bank out of Southern California, like a $16 billion commercial lending bank, and they're great. And then a lot of our financial advisors are trading at Charles Schwab or TD Ameritrade. So that's where they would go to afterwards. Many times after that, people are funding their own business ventures, and then they're opening up at their local bank in the name of a new LLC. And so the part of the funds can go to that LLC to go to that investment venture. So does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Yeah. Good question. Yeah, it's a good question because you're like, where do they go? The key is they go to the trust account, right? That's opened up. But here's the key, really. Does this trust account do any other business with anybody else? Or are the funds commingled with other funds? And the answer is absolutely never commingled with other funds. It doesn't do business with anybody else. So if Pickens did the deal or your client did the deal, it's only going to do business with that individual and if they're married, their spouse, right? So that's the key here. And then they have to approve of the investments, and they have to approve of the movement of the funds. And so we have all of those things in place to make sure that things don't go somewhere they shouldn't go, and it's all protected.
So, you would be a continuous partner throughout the lifespan of the trust. If, let's say, you wanted to further diversify the investments that you have with the remaining amount in the trust. Is that right? Yeah.
So you're talking about the partnership with the trust. How does that work?
Yeah. So let's say you have 50% of the funds left in the trust, and you decide, hey, I think I want to get into crypto. Then I would call you guys up again and say, let's do this. Let's figure out.
Yep. Let's walk through that. Yeah. So first of all, before funds go anywhere, you fill out what's called a risk tolerance questionnaire, and that scores your risk on and your it also helps to place the interest rate on the promissory note. So we're gonna have that in place, and typically our notes are paying anywhere from 5 to 8% net of the recurring fees, compounding over the life of the trust. Typically they're 10 years on average, and you can renew every 10 years for 10 years. So we're going to look at that plan, right, or that risk tolerance score, develop a plan or some investments, and then you have to approve it. I have to approve it. Now, a part of that can be crypto, right? And so, to the extent that your risk isn't too high on that, what might that be? That might be 5%. That might be 10%. It is your money and it is your approval, but we have to approve it too. So we have to follow some things that call like over concentration. So we probably wouldn't put 50% in, and but can you put a large percentage of that back into crypto? Yeah, you can. Probably wouldn't be 50%, but the kind of the mechanics of it would be, hey, I'm looking at some cryptocurrency. I know we have 50% in these investments, right? What do you think about a percentage here? And then we look at it together, and then you can approve it, I can approve it. So if you had unilateral like approval, then that basically means you own the trust, which you don't own the trust, right? And that would make it taxable. So it's really a team effort. We're like, how do we get the money back to Pickens, not take on too much risk, and still get a good return, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And you also mentioned while the money is sitting there, it gains interest. It gains interest.
Yeah. So it's two things to consider here, right? How is the deferred sales trust gaining interest? Well, there's the actual promissory note. That's a piece of paper that's on paper. It's gaining interest. And there's the actual performance of the trust or the investments themselves. And is that gaining interest? And ideally, those are mirrored up or matching. And actually, even this is growing even more to give us that cushion over here. And so if it's just sitting in the bank, just like if you just pay tax, it's getting eaten up by inflation. So we want to get the money working and invest it, right? So this is not a guarantee, just because it's in the trust is just the wrapper, right? Just like if you put money into an IRA or 401k, just because it's in an IRA or 401k doesn't mean it's going to give you X return. It's the investments, underlying investments that the funds are in that are hopefully producing that return. So we still have to go invest the funds and then, hope that they do get a good return, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
Good questions. Thank you for asking. What else do we have here? Anyone else? We have Nicola, we have Maria, we have Rebecca, we have Candace, who we haven't heard from yet. And it's okay if you have nothing for it, you can just chat and hang out with us. You can also put it in the chat if you have questions or thoughts. You can unmute yourself and say hello.
Hey, Brad, I'm just going to say hello. I don't have any questions.
Hey, Rebecca. Yeah, no, that's cool. How's everything up in Tahoe and Truckee these days?
Things are great. Things are really great. Just coming off of 15 days on vacation in Croatia and Iceland. So finally getting back to real life. So yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, you wonder where, when you're living Lake Tahoe and Truckee, and for those who don't know, Rebecca is a luxury agent up there, sells real estate. One of our alliances there in Truckee, Tahoe. So Croatia, Iceland, that's a really cool spot. Which one had the best food?
Croatia, definitely, hands down. So if you're into any kind of seafood, it was incredible. So yeah, best
Sounds
weather.
nice.
Iceland was nice, but I'm going back to Croatia. I'm actually considering investing there, maybe buying. Anyway, we'll see. But
by the way, the deferred sales trust, you can invest in other countries, right? So
yeah.
It's not limited to just the US, like a 1031 exchanges. We had that come up last week on a deal. They're like, well, I can't 1031 into a deal in Cabo, but can I use the deferred sales trust funds to invest in a deal in Cabo? And the answer is yes. So Croatia too, so very cool. Really cool. What would you like about the real estate there?
That it would certainly compared to California, but very, very affordable. Lots of waterfront or water view properties. There's like 1,200 kilometers of shoreline. So, and then over 1,200 islands in the Dalmatian coast. So, hits kind of the one of the bucket lists of owning property on the water or, water view. So, yeah.
That's really cool. What's the average price for like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house on the in American dollars, what would it be
So
there?
not
Do you think?
not too many homes, and but definitely condos, townhomes, that kind of thing. You can get waterfront property for about 200
Wow,
American dollars. So 3-bedroom, 2-bath in a condo complex. Yeah.
$200,000 for that's pretty sweet. Are they pretty? What's the age of them?
Pretty new. We're doing a lot of building since they were in a war not that long ago. So,
Mm-hmm.
so the stability in Croatia is definitely something to think about, but they're going to be part of the EU next year. So that's why it's increasing.
Pretty cool stuff. Well, that's exciting. Well, excellent. Thanks for sharing, Rebecca. Nice to see you back. Anybody else? Questions, thoughts? We have just a few minutes remaining, and we so appreciate everyone out there. And in fact, it's already 10:50. So if there are no questions or thoughts, we can wrap it up as well. But I'll leave it open here for just a few more 30 more seconds, and otherwise be thinking about who you can invite next week, who might appreciate being able to plan some exit planning, who has a highly appreciated asset. It could be even clients, right? It could be friends and family, anyone who wants to join us to kind of get to know us and get to understand the Deferred Sales Trust. If you want to take action, you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can rate, review, subscribe, and then you can share this with somebody. This is always going to be live streamed on YouTube. So that's their main spot. We have also our Facebook and Instagram channels as well. If you want to connect with us there, it's Brett Swarts for Instagram. And then other than that, we appreciate everyone out there. Looks like we have no questions from anybody. So appreciate everybody, and we'll see you again next week. Okay. Bye now.